Hello, awesome, beautiful people. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are watching us from. Of course, you know it's always a privilege to pour out our spirits this morning. You are welcome to another wonderful spiritual exercise. You know, a whole lot of you do not understand spirituality. You think spirituality is the acrobatics you display in churches. No. Spirituality simply means connection. Connecting directly to your creator and connecting to your environment is called spirituality. There cannot be spirituality if there is no connection. So if you are connecting with your environment, connecting with nature, of course, that's spirituality. Today, we want to connect with our history. You know, when you come here, be rest assured that you will hear history in a way that you have never heard it before. And I assure you that these few minutes we'll spend here shall be worth it. Take your pens and your books, your tablets and your iPads, and write down as we go. You're welcome to another hour with Prof. Ohia. All right. So quickly, let us dive into a topic I have entitled today, Instead of Us to Fight, Let the Africans Die. Can I repeat that? Instead of us to fight, let the Africans die. You know, I said something in my last video and I'm going to repeat it here. I said I respect Europeans. That was me talking about my last video. The topic, being organized, is the first chapter in the book of Total Liberation. I said I respect the Europeans. And in this, our lesson today, I'll give you reasons why I say I respect the Europeans. Do you understand? Now, before we continue, only a fool will say, let's forget history. It's past, let's forget about it. No, you don't forget history. You learn from history and make corrections where they need to be made. So only fools say, let's forget history, but the wise don't forget history. They learn and they make corrections with it. I give you an example. If you are walking through a path, you probably are going to the market, you're walking through a path in the night, and mistakenly you fall into a pit. From history and experience, the next time you are taking that route, you are much aware there is a pit there, and that alone hints you to avoid that pit in order not to fall into it again. You would be a fool to pass through a route the first time, fall into a pit, and the second time you repeat the same thing. That means you are simply a fool. Only a fool will say, let's forget history and move on. No, the wise do not forget history. They learn from it and make corrections where there needs to be made, where corrections need to be made. All right. Also, you know, I'm always referring to my last video. You have not watched it, please do yourself a favor and go and watch that video. Being Organized is the first chapter in the book of Total Liberation, a video I dropped a few weeks ago. Go and watch it because it is fully packed. Okay? It is extremely packed. Go and watch and learn and relearn, and I tell you, your life will never remain the same. So we're looking at, instead of us to fight, let the Africans die. Fantastic. Now, this is a practical example of what happened in the 1880s. Now, I want to warn you, the topic we're about to treat today is quite sensitive. So please, prepare yourself for the things you're about to hear. Probably you have not heard it before. Probably you have heard it, but not like this. But I'm here to ensure that you hear your history in a way you have not heard it before. And so, instead of us to fight, let the Africans die, was a clear depiction of what happened in the 1980s. Okay, so I'm going to start from the beginning. Also, in my last video, I said 140 years later, Africans are still struggling because a few Europeans sat down, organized themselves to take over Africa and to steal from us. Okay, that singular act of the 1980s till today, we are still struggling to undo them. So today we want to talk about what happened at the Berlin Conference and what happened in the 1880s. Pay rapt attention. So, in the 1880s, okay, there was what we call scramble for Africa, where European powers and the likes of Great Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Portugal, and the King of Belgium, these were considered European powers at the time. They were scrambling for the possession of territories in Africa. Do you understand? And this got to an extent where it was causing conflicts between these European powers. England said, this is my territory. France will say, this is my territory. Germany will say, this is my territory. And it was causing conflict. Now, the conflict rose and it got to a point where it almost led to war. Listen well. So, because of the territories in Africa claiming ownership of territories in Africa that doesn't belong to them, because of the territories they were trying to claim in Africa, it was almost causing a war in Europe between the European powers. Now, here is where I tell you that I respect the Europeans. Instead of the Europeans to fight over territories in Africa, taking ownership of territories in Africa, they said, no, instead of us to fight, let the Africans die. And a man called Otto von Bismarck said the European powers should have a meeting in Berlin. Of course, you know Berlin is in Germany. And they had a meeting in Berlin, Germany, to discuss how they are going to divide Africa into territories that will satisfy their own interests. Can I tell you something? No African leader, no African representative, no African whatsoever was invited for that meeting. It was strictly between European, so-called European powers that wanted to steal lands in Africa, that wanted to steal gold in Africa, that wanted to steal diamonds in Africa. So these claiming of territories wanted to cause a war between them. And they said, instead of us to fight, let us come together and sit and discuss how we can take these territories without fighting between ourselves. And that led to the Berlin Conference, November 1884 to February 1885. Men, a few European men, sat down on a round table, brought out the African map, and decided to divide it like a piece of cake. Are you getting what I'm saying? Dividing it like a piece of cake. Great Britain said, Nigeria, Ghana is my territory. France said, Togo, Benin is my territory. DR Congo, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, these are all my territories. It was so bad that in Cameroon, Great Britain took half, English-speaking Cameroon, and France took half, French-speaking Cameroonians. So they divided our fatherland like a piece of cake without inviting our fathers to the table. Do you understand what I'm saying? The Berlin Conference. So my people, that was how these European guys divided your father's land and my father's land like a piece of cake, like a people dividing birthday cake. And they claimed territories. Now, it will interest you to know that when they were, before they divided these territories and placed artificial borders, there were kingdoms existing in Africa. There were communities, there were towns, there were cities. Okay? They did not pay respect to the ethnic divides of Africa they divided it based on their own interest and what they are looking forward to gaining in that particular territory, and they took the territory for themselves. Do you know what it means? They brought the map and they divided it for themselves. The people took territories from themselves, lands that did not belong to them. And that's how they divided and placed the artificial borders, not paying attention to ethnic divides, not paying attention to whatsoever. And you know, in those days in Africa, African people lived according to ethnic affiliations. So people with common interests lived at a particular location. So we were able to divide ourselves and make kingdoms because we lived in a way we could understand ourselves better, because we understand the environment. But these guys came and divided it and put the artificial borders and just did all manner of nonsense without consulting anybody and without thinking of the consequences. It was none of their business. Do you understand? So we want to look at the reasons why these guys held the Berlin Conference. Of course, the number one reason I told you was to avoid war between European powers. Do you understand? Second reason why these guys carved out this place and marked out territories for themselves was because they wanted to establish orderly colonization rules. So they wanted to establish rules in which you can own a territory in Africa in order to avoid, of course, you know, the tensions and the chaos. So beforehand, claiming of the territories were chaotic. Do you understand? So how they put in principles in which a country can claim another region and its own and have full control over it through military presence. So one of the rules was putting your military in that location. When you have your military on ground in that location, that territory belongs to you, and having treaties from local rulers as well. So they had to make their own law. So these guys went to the conference to legalize illegalities. They went to legalize their illegalities. So now that we have signed, it has become a law. How can somebody sign a law on behalf of another people? People are in Europe signing laws they can use to colonize Africans who are in Africa and taking over their land. Another reason why these guys held the Berlin Conference as well was to legitimize and formalize European claims of African land. Do you understand? So they put their claim in international law, which makes it now legal for another people to control the affairs of other people in the name of colonization. They had to infuse it in the law so it doesn't look like they are committing a crime. So these guys went to Berlin Conference to avoid war and to legitimize their illegitimacy, to legitimize their wrongdoing, to formalize their what's it called? Their barbaric and inhumane attitude. You see these guys, man. You see why I respect them. So instead of them to fight, let the Africans die. Instead of us to fight, let's sit down, plan how to conquer and take over territories that belongs to another people. Are you getting me? Until now, Africans are unable to sit down and also organize to undo what these guys have done, so that we can reclaim our territory that has been taken over by new colonialism and giving us our fake independence. Are you getting me? What was the impact and the effects of the Berlin Conference to Africa? Can we talk about that? Yes, of course we can talk about that. When they claimed this, stole, let me not say claim, when they stole these territories, they created artificial borders. They created artificial borders. Like I said earlier, not paying or respecting ethnic lines. They created artificial borders, carved out territories from themselves. One said a country is Nigeria, one said a country is Ghana, one said a country is Togo, one said a country is Benin Republic. Do you see what we are talking about? And this, what's it called? Creating of artificial borders was one of the reasons that led to the so many civil wars we had in Africa, because people who were not compatible were forced to stay together as one people. Not for their own, not for the people's interest, but for the interest of the people that want to rule over them and steal resources from their land. It is high time we begin to challenge some of this nonsense these guys have done. If it was left to me, all the artificial borders will be brought down. Then Africans will sit down and decide countries for ourselves. We create our own countries. Everywhere in the world, people create countries for themselves. Only in Africa that our countries were created by our enemies. We can't beat around the bush anymore. We must face the truth. Our countries were created by our enemies. Effect of Berlin Conference on Africa, number 2. Colonial rule and loss of sovereignty of African nations. Africans lost the right to rule themselves. The entire continent was colonized except Ethiopia and Liberia. Everywhere was taken. Africans lost control of their land, lost control of their resources, lost control of their government. Traditional leaders that were elected by the people, that were selected by the people, that were put there by the people to lead them, the European colonial masters brought them down and imposed their own people, some criminal Africans. They imposed their criminal Africans on leadership position in Africa for them to do their own biddings. This was what these guys did in our land. Do you understand? Of course, another effect of the Berlin Conference was economic exploitation. This one, you don't need to talk about it because it has been spoken about a million times. European powers extracted from Africa and is still extracting from Africa all our natural resources, using our resources to develop their lands, while our lands, our people are suffering, using our resources to develop their places, making their place heaven on earth, and abandoning religion here, telling us that when we die we enjoy heaven, but they're enjoying heaven in their place. They exploited us to destroy everything. Systems they were working, they destroyed it, and imposed forced labor on both adults and children. And failure to do so, there was consequences. And one bastard called King Leopold II of Belgium claimed DR Congo in this conference. He claimed DR Congo as his personal property. He claimed it as his personal property, that it belongs to him. King Leopold did not hold a colony in Congo out of the 1880s. He claimed it as his personal property, including the people in it and the natural resources in it. And you say we should not talk? A man claimed a people, their properties, their resources, their ancestral land as his personal property, and they signed it for him at the Berlin Conference legally. And we should be quiet. And this man committed atrocity in DR Congo that the media don't talk about and people don't talk about. And in my next video, I'm going to discuss about what Leopold did in Congo. The evil that man orchestrated in that place. How children limbs were cut off for not meeting the requirement of the rubber stamp. Their legs, their hands were cut off. Is this something we should be quiet about? No, I refuse to be quiet. I must speak. I must speak my conscience. Do you understand it? That's one of the effects of this Berlin Conference, this organization of a few Europeans in 1884 to 1885 that destroyed our being as a people. Number 4, cultural and social life destruction. They destroy the culture, they destroy the social life. You know, Europeans are very funny people. They don't respect people's culture, they don't respect people's way of life. They always want to impose their way of life on you. You get me? Introducing their bastardized languages, their bastardized educational system, their bastardized religion, and their bastardized custom compulsory on the African society and the African people. and our own cultures and traditions and languages were suspended. Racism and white supremacy was institutionalized, laying groundwork for segregation, apartheid, like we had in South Africa. Are you listening to what I'm telling you right now? That's what I talked about: miseducation, misinformation, and misconception in Africa. Destroyed our education, destroyed our culture, destroyed our spirituality, and introduced their own, so as to keep us in perpetual bondage. Do you understand? And today, till today, Africans are still fighting over religious sentiments. I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that. Educational system teaching us how to be slaves forever. Promoting European language, learning French and English and all those nonsense in school. Promoting racism. Not only did Europeans become racist over Africans, but they taught their colonies how to disregard and disrespect other colonies that were not part of them. Not only did they create these borders, they made sure they broke intertrade between African countries. So, because Ghana is an English territory and Togo is a French territory, they cannot cross border for trade. They blocked everything so as to divide and conquer. Till today, ask yourself, are these what's it called? These rules, are they still working or they have been suspended? They are still working till today. Till today, there is still no inter-African trade. We don't. Till today, there is so much hatred between Africans. Till today, there is still more segregation. So much stupidity. Because we are still upholding to the colonial structure these guys put in place. Some of you don't understand the effect of the Berlin Conference on the African people and the African society. It left a legacy of division and instability. When these guys created these artificial borders, they brought rival groups, different rival groups as a country together. Meanwhile, family groups, ethnic groups were divided into different countries, but rival ethnic groups were joined together as one country. Why the same ethnic group were divided into different countries? What will you expect? Chaos, trouble, problem, fighting, destruction, instability. I told you this division contributed to civil war, border dispute, political instability. We are still struggling today as a result of what these guys did in 1884 to 1885. And we should be quiet. What's another effect? Violence and brutality. Of course, when you met people who are not compatible together, you only get violence. You cannot put a people together as one country without their consent. They must give their consent to live together as one. America became one because the people agreed, came together and wrote a constitution that upheld the beliefs of the people. Not somebody sitting somewhere and carving a place and calling your country. People without the same ideology, the same mindset, the same goals, forced together in a place as a country. Of course, there will be chaos and there will be war. And when the chaos came, they say, look at the Africans, they're barbarians. They're all fighting amongst themselves. But you created this fight. You created this chaos. So that's why when I see some of you ignorant fellows saying that without colonization, Africa would have not been developed, I just realized you're talking out of ignorance and pure stupidity, because you don't know what was involved in colonization. If you knew, you wouldn't say anything positive about it, because it was barbaric, it was inhumane. Like I said, part of the effect was that it brought instability and division, and it led to wars. Let's look at some of the wars that colonization brought about, and the Berlin Conference and the artificial division of African soil brought about. Nigerian Civil War, 1967 to 1970, where over 4 million Igbo people were killed as a result of merging a people who are not supposed to be together as one people and giving them fake leadership, raising one ethnic group over the other. Of course, I'm not going to talk about the wars in detail. I'm just going to give you examples. The Nigerian Civil War was an example of what the artificial border brought about. We talk about the Somalis Civil War, 1991 till now, they are still fighting. Do you understand? We talk about the what's it called? The Sudan Darfur conflict, 2003 till now, they are still fighting. We talk about the South Sudanese Civil War. We talk about the Rwanda genocide, 1994. We talk about the Second Ivorian Civil War, 2010 to 2011. So what are you talking about? Do you understand? When I read the part 2 of this video, I will tell you the evil atrocities that was committed by the Belgian king Leopold II, how people's hands were cut off, and what this man did to our people, to your forefathers and to my forefathers. Do you understand? It is time that we sit down and undo the rubbish these guys have done, undo the fake borders, undo the fake languages, undo the fake cultures, and embrace ourselves as one people and live together in peace and unity. Until then, we'll keep beating around the bush. Africa, it's time to rise. I see you soon.